Hi, brothers and sisters. How are you today? Wow, it's been a while since I've been on here. But I wanted to come to you today with what I feel is a very important and timely message. I haven't gotten on here. I've tried to a couple times, but it was almost like God stopped me. And I know when I'm supposed to be on here. There's been plenty of times over the years where I make messages or I make videos and I never actually put them out, just because I just listen to God when He is speaking to me, and when He says go, I go, and when He says no, then I don't. But I feel very strongly that He is calling me back to YouTube to reach as many people as we can in these last moments on earth. I started my original channel almost 10 years ago. Had a rather large following, and then YouTube decided that they were going to just terminate my account for no reason. I had no strikes or anything. So I took that as a time for me to stop, because God let it happen. But now I'm feeling an urgency to get on here and to start spreading the word. And because I think there's a lack of it. I think, sadly, as much as I even love my church, I think the churches are doing us a very big disservice right now. And they're not correlating the times with biblical prophecy. And we can't just ignore 30% of the Bible, and something that, the disciples were always asking Jesus, like, what will be the signs of your coming, and what should we be looking for? And they couldn't wait to think about their reuniting with Jesus again. And so the fact that our churches right now are not discussing this is very, very, very disappointing, but also very, very, very prophetic. It speaks of that in the Bible, that there won't be any sound doctrine. And so I think we're seeing that right now. And I think in the world that we're in right now, we should be turning to the Bible. That should be the only truth. There's no other truth out there. The media is certainly not going to give you truth. Facebook isn't going to give you truth. Instagram isn't going to give you truth. There's only one place to get truth right now, and that is the Word. And so today I want to bring you something that I found out recently, and I just think it is such an encouragement. Many of you have probably heard the teachings of the end times, where Jesus has a way of putting His words into parables. And He was such a great teacher in that He could make good comparisons, so that they would understand. So one of the things that He did about, and one of the comparisons that He would make about the end times, was that it was like a marriage. And so if you haven't read that, I will put the link below, or the Bible verses below, so that you can research this on your own, so that you can see that this is what He said. But for today's teaching and for today, the time purposes, I want to kind of jump right into it. But he would say that it was like a wedding, between a bridegroom and a bride. So in our time, that's a groom and a bride. So think of Jesus as the groom, the bridegroom. He is the groom. We, His children, the church, are the bride. Okay? So when Jesus was teaching, He was teaching to Galileans, right? And so there was a culture. The Galilean wedding it's really beautiful how it's done, but what's interesting is that there's so many correlations that we're just now uncovering, because the culture of the Galilean wedding has changed. So back in that time, a Galilean wedding looked a little different. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what that looked like. So a Galilean wedding is basically an exact depiction of Jesus's second coming. So let's break it down. And that's why He used the parable, because in that time, if you were Galilean, you would totally know what a Galilean wedding was. like if he started speaking about it's like a wedding, they would know what the steps of a wedding, what it looked like back then. It's why they didn't ask more questions about, well, what does that look like? What does that mean? Because they understood it 100%. So because we don't know the culture and it's been removed and it's, so long ago, we've lost that culture piece. And so we've lost the ability to make a great comparison to the second coming, to the wedding. Okay, so in Galilean times, the father would betroth, he would find a wife or find a bride for his son. And before they were married, they would go through what would be considered now an engagement, right? So back then, the father would read a covenant between. So let's say he goes out, he finds the bride, right? He brings the potential bride back to his son. There's a public gathering, and the father reads a covenant that would be a covenant between the groom and the bride to be. And that during that covenant, they would all sign an agreement that they heard the covenant, that they listened to the covenant, and this is like unlike any other culture in the Middle East. After they've read the covenant, right? So everyone's in agreement. They read the covenant, they listened to it, they signed it. Now, the soon-to-be groom will pour a cup of wine into a cup and hand it to the bride. And at this point, she was given full power to say yes or no, whether she wanted to marry him or not. Now, I want to make the correlation right now. The Bible is written by the Father. It is a covenant between us and him. We are given the covenant. We can read the covenant, and it's up to us whether we want to accept it or not. It is not forced upon us. It is given to us. We acknowledge it, and then we say, yeah, I'm going to follow this, or no, I'm not going to follow this. So it's the same type of thing with this engagement before the wedding. So at this point, if she drinks from the cup, she is accepting the covenant of marriage. At that point, that's when everything begins. Same thing for us. Think about the Last Supper. Jesus poured the wine and said, this is my body. With this, it would make us one. So you're drinking and you're accepting Jesus. You're accepting the covenant between the two. So the correlation, very strong here. Okay. So then after she accepts it, that's when all the festivities begin. They have 1 year. And at that point, when she reads, there's one last thing. At that point, when she takes the cup and she drinks from it, and then the groom would say something similar to, now you're consecrated to me by the laws of Moses, and we will not drink of this cup again until I drink with you in my Father's house. Now, if you go back again to the Last Supper, Jesus says something very similar. He says, I say to you, I will not drink of this cup with you until I drink it new with you in my Father's house. So very similar. There's a reason why he used this correlation. So that basically seals the betrothal for the bride and the bridegroom. We also think this is why it's very significant that Jesus's first miracle that he performed was at a wedding, turning the water into wine. So nothing's by accident, right? Like everything is for a reason. And that was his first miracle. And it was at a wedding. And it was about the cup and the covenant and the drink and the connection. All of it connects. So after the bride and the groom have drank from the cup, they are in their covenant. They have a full year goes into preparation for the wedding. So they have to live apart this entire time before the huge wedding feast. So they've made the covenant, they've drank together, but now they have to part. Okay, same thing. Jesus gives us the covenant, and now he has to part and go be with his Father until we can be together again. So during this time, the groom has to go back and start preparing a house. So he starts building onto his father's house. He built on his own home off of his father's house. So Jesus says the same thing. He says that he must leave to prepare a house for us, but that he'll return so that we can be together again. It's the same correlation. It's absolutely beautiful. He's building a new room. He's preparing a place for the bride. And then the bride's job, while the bridegroom is away, is that she has to take the next year to prepare. She has to prepare for the moment. And why do I say prepare? Because here's something really interesting. A lot of times in the Middle Eastern culture, there is a year between the engagement and the wedding, and a lot of times they don't get to see each other. Okay, that's a common thing. But the one thing that's different about this Galilean wedding is that there is no date set. They're not allowed to set a date. And the only one that knows, and the only one that has the power to say, go get your bride, is the father of the groom, the one that read the covenant. So I want to rewind that for you now. So God wrote the covenant, and then he paid for us, the bride, with his son Jesus. He paid the price for the bride with his son. Just like the Galilean father paid money to have the bride brought to his son. And in the wedding, the father is the only one that gets to say it's time for a wedding. Nobody knows. Nobody knows the day or the hour. They just have to be prepared and ready. What does Jesus say to the disciples? He says, no one knows the time. No man knows the day or the hour. Only the Father knows. So that's why I believe like the disciples didn't dive deeper into those types of questions, is because they completely understood. They were Galilean. They knew what a Galilean wedding was. So there were no questions about that. Okay, so during this time, bride is away. She is preparing. She is making sure that she has enough oil in her lamp, that everything is ready to go, so that if her bridegroom shows up one night, she's ready to hop out of bed and take off with him. She needs to stay vigilant. She needs to occupy until the bridegroom comes. And she needs to stay pure. Be ready and waiting always. God tells us, Jesus told us the same thing. He told us all those things, to stay vigilant, to occupy. He doesn't want us to just sit around and wait for him, but we need to be ready and prepared and pure and ready to go. But we also need to be occupying. So she didn't know when the bridegroom was coming, but only the Father, the one who read the covenant. So at that time, so we've got all these pieces going together, right? So now, at that time, once the Father says, go get your bride, the bridegroom jumps out of bed and runs over to the bride and says it's time. And then everybody gets a call or a text, however they did it back then, and they all go off to the wedding celebration. Now, what happens next is really interesting too. So once the doors close on the celebration, that's it. No one comes in or out for 7 days. It's a 7-day celebration. No one comes in, no one goes out. Once you close the door, if you're not in there, sorry, you're not coming in. What else does that sound like? Once Jesus takes his church, takes his bride, no one's coming in or coming out for 7 years. There's a 7-year tribulation period of time before Jesus steps foot back on the earth. This is amazing. I have never seen such a beautiful correlation before. This is how it is. And then you take it one step deeper to look at, no wonder the devil has always been after the covenant of marriage, because he knows exactly what's happening. He knows exactly the wedding that is going to take place. And so he has just been after the covenant of marriage from the very beginning, because he knows that's the cornerstone, that's the foundation of Jesus and his relationship with his bride, the bridegroom and the bride. So why not try to consistently try to break down the walls of marriage? It makes so much sense. And this should be encouragement, you guys. Like, this is where we're at. We're here. Like, be ready. Make sure there's enough oil in your lamp. And the reason I keep saying that is because when the women were waiting, here's the thing, they were awake. They were ready. They were waiting, but they didn't have enough oil in their lamp. So even though they were awake and they knew what was going on and they were ready for the return, they still missed it because they didn't have enough oil to get them through. And guys, I know it's hard right now. Like, during this quarantine, even though, like, you would think that's the time where you just press into God, and I was saying that, I was having the lip service of pressing into God, but I wasn't. I was really distant, and I was like, it was almost like I was in some kind of survival mode, but I wasn't trying to survive with the one that actually gives me life. And so I know the evil that ensues right now. Like, it is everywhere. It is thick. You can't make your way through it without God. And I know now, as we enter into these last moments, that we have to be so vigilant. We have to make sure that we're putting oil in our lamp every day. I do not want to be here and be one of those people that was awake and ready but just didn't have enough oil in my lamp. I just don't want to be that person. And so I don't want you to be that person either. So my hope and my prayer is that God keeps giving me messages that I can come on here and try to reach as many people. Because like I said, there's so much noise out there right now. Like, it gives me anxiety to know how much crap is out there right now that's not true. Like, literally, I feel like everything is a deception. Everything that I look at, everything that I read, it's a joke. Really, it's a joke. And so the only truth and the only peace that I get is from God, and knowing that, he's not going to let this go on much longer, that he is going to come back for his bridegroom, and we need to be ready for his bride. He is the bridegroom. We need to be ready, oil and lamps ready to go. So that's my message for today. I hope that it blesses somebody. Pass it on, subscribe, tell your friends. We've got to get the word out. There's such a lack of truth out there. There's so many false people and prophets, and we just got to band together. We got to band together again, and we have to work together to help save souls for the kingdom before the end, because it's coming. I mean, there's like nothing much left that has to happen, and we're watching the end unfold. We're watching humanity crumble. We're watching the division. Is just, I never thought, I've always thought that I would be here for the end times, but to actually see it happening, it's a lot harder than I actually thought. It's hard to see the breakdown, because my heart just aches for people, because they don't know what's up, and you can't tell them. I mean, that the age of where you can actually reason with somebody, that's long gone. The only way that I feel like we can reach people is that if God is nudging them and they get the right messages in front of them, that's going to help them. But to just like go on and have a conversation with somebody anymore, you almost can't even do that. So if there's somebody in your life that is asking questions or is maybe feeling the nudge, pass this on. This is awesome stuff. Like, this is biblical stuff. Like, that is factual factual based as well as biblical. So I pray for all of you. And if you guys know who Jamie Stam is on Stam Heating and Cooling, we're trying to get a group of people to do like a church online kind of thing, like just for us, some worship, some prayer, just some talking through some things. So if you would be interested in that, please let me know in the comments, and I will get you the information for when we have. It'll probably be a Zoom call. So yeah, if you're interested, we would love to have you there. I don't have a date yet. Lord willing, we'll get something on the calendar here shortly. But I love you guys. I hope you have a blessed day. Stay safe, stay prayed up. I will hopefully have another message for you soon. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.